Hi, this is O'Connor. Welcome back for Supply Chain Essentials. And I want to talk about how large buyers manage their suppliers. I want to take you through some frameworks and give you some real case studies of what multinationals are doing in managing their global supply chains. Now, the big thing that we understand about the global supply chain is the following, that often buyers have the choice to actually make or buy. They have a choice to make their own things in their own domestic country. But multinationals go multinational in order to sell overseas, but also they organize global supply chains when they buy from overseas. There's a make or buy, the classic make or buy decision that multinationals have to go through. But if you have a look and on the side here, what I've got here on this side, you'll see that when you actually go overseas and source from overseas, you're actually incurring control costs. All right. When you actually go overseas and source from overseas, you're trading that off against political, xenophobic, and environmental risks. And these are the big challenges that multinationals have in managing the supply chain because their reputation is at stake, as you'll find out soon. Now, if I ask these multinationals, VF Corp, HTC, PUMA, they will tell you that there's some elements of reputation, cost, time, forecasting, basically information asymmetry about their global supply chain that they always challenge with and always wanted to create more visibility on. Okay, PUMA wants to have more visibility on second tier, third tier, fourth tier suppliers. VF Corp wants to understand what is the cost of time because they're making the ordinary 5-pocket variety in Mexico, but they're actually making more advanced varieties in China requiring much more skilled labor. Now, getting to market from China takes a month or more versus getting from market from Mexico into North America. As you can see, I asked HTC, what is their biggest challenge? It's the forecasts. Often reputation, cost, time, forecast. These are the big challenges. This is what big buyers care about. And as you can see, what happened with the PUMA t-shirt incident back in 2016, PUMA had to find out what went on and found, they went back to their second tier and third tier supplier and there was a faulty batch of materials that was delivered to the the PUMA manufacturer. So if we go back, let's go back to essentials here and we go back to project management essentials. It's always a trade-off between scope, quality, cost, or time. All right. Now, what does that mean? You can only have 2 of these 3 on the outside circle, considering that quality is non-negotiable. That is, you can have large volume for low cost, but it's going to take you longer. You can have it delivered tomorrow at low cost, but only a small volume. Or you can have large volume and deliver next week, but it's going to cost you a lot. This is the basic trade-off that any company has to deal with in terms of at the project management level. Now, when we go to the supply chain level, we are thinking more in terms of trading off how often do we order versus how much inventory we carry. That's the normal EOQ model. Or we can morph that into the JIT model, and that is we actually trade off how much inventory do we want to have a carry, and we want to reduce that in a JIT approach. But then we have the potential for stock out costs if we have less inventory. And so there's all these trade-offs between having lots of purchase orders and low inventory, or large, fewer purchase orders and higher inventory, or in a JIT model, that is, you have lots of inventory in order to minimize any stock out costs, or you have minimal inventory but you're going to have the potential for higher stock out costs. And it's always a trade-off between the supplier cost structure, the supply capacity up here, and we've got the buyer demand forecast here. These are the big 3 unknowns. That is, yes, the buyers, they don't always know the future sales, and that multinationals have a greater challenge with that because their sales are in the millions and tens of millions and the hundreds of millions. And so you better get the forecast right because you cannot ring up a supplier at the last minute. Can you give me 1 million widgets by tomorrow? But you're going to have the potential for higher stock out costs. And it's always a trade-off between the supplier cost structure, the supply capacity up here, and we've got the buyer demand forecast here. These are the big 3 unknowns. That is, yes, the buyers, they don't always know the future sales, and that multinationals have a greater challenge with that because their sales are in the millions and tens of millions and the hundreds of millions. And so you better get the forecast right because you cannot ring up a supplier at the last minute. Can you give me 1 million widgets by tomorrow? Wow. Supplier capacity is a big thing that suppliers may not tell you about. They may lie to you about. They may say, oh, we've got large factory capacity. Oh, we're going to give you our capacity in priority to other orders, but when you order from them, then you find out that they don't. They have 1/10 of that capacity, or they are putting other orders in front of you. You don't know that as a buyer, and that's the information asymmetry. The other thing you don't know about is the fact that you've got a supplier cost structure. And where can the suppliers pull the wool over your eyes? It's in terms of not the labor, because labor costs, market costs, you know what the labor is. It's not the materials, because you know what the material prices are. You actually are sourcing materials from second tier, third tier suppliers. You can get market values on that. It's in the tooling. It's in the tooling where the suppliers can pull the wool over your eyes. So these are the big three unknowns for the multinationals. So Neil, what have you got to commit to this knowledge? I commit the following, that is this multi-sourcing framework, this contracts incomplete, and also the supplier development. This multi-sourcing, incomplete contracts, and supplier development model, which actually comes out of this three big unknowns over here, the market forces right in front of me here, and at the bottom, the performance measurement system that supplier multinationals need to have. So what are we talking about? The top circle is the selection of suppliers that go into your supply chain. Multi-sourcing, single sourcing, which country you're sourcing from. Then you've got contracts. You go contract with the suppliers, and unless you're going to take them to court every other month, contracts are unwieldy, and often they are incomplete. Of course, you can have it totally structured and have everything, but they're not complete in terms of getting the suppliers to do the right thing by you all the time when you're not looking. Okay, many instances, even under a contract, suppliers may take shortcuts if they feel they can get away with it. So what the big multinationals are doing is not necessarily in improving how they multi-source or improving how they write contracts, but it's all about how they improve their supplier development. So that's what does that mean? And this is why I want to talk about some examples of supplier development. So we have S. Oliver, PUMA, H&M, IKEA. I've already talked about PUMA. But what is a common theme among these companies? And you can see they're in apparel and furniture. They have virtual design teams. Now, up until the pandemic, they were actually sending their design teams into the factories to stay in the factories for weeks on end to develop new clothes, new designs. They were not relying on email from a distant country backwards and forwards to agree on certain designs, checking the sample and ding dong, ding dong, ding dong, ding dong. No, they were sending the design teams to the factories. Border closures, well, they have to rely on third parties to be in the factories, to be proxies, third-party proxies for the design teams. So that's what they're doing now. All right, what else is S. Oliver, PUMA, H&M, IKEA doing? They're actually focusing on the development of the suppliers. And it's like the Olympic Games, where you have certain approved suppliers at the bronze stage, and at the silver stage, at the gold stage, and at the platinum stage. So the suppliers don't only have the incentive under the contract to get paid for what they're delivering, they have the incentive to go to the next level, like the silver level under H&M, where they will be privy to more opportunities, privy to more planning communications. And so then the supplier feels that they're part of the family. If they go to the gold level, they'll be even more privy and seen as a strategic supplier. They go to the platinum level, definitely a strategic supplier, and they'll see the full product roadmap. And the supplier not only feels that they're getting paid for every time they're doing a delivery, but they're part of the family. And that's the big thing about supplier development that all of these companies are doing, not just these industries, but in other industries as well. If we talk about the pandemic at the moment, we talk about resilience and visibility and sustainability and climate change. Yes, but on the ground, you have to put in these structures by which you create a aggregated stepping stone for suppliers to move along, to go to another level where they feel as though they're more part of your strategic planning, more part of your procurement process. And they're not just on the receiving end of a phone call, we would like 10,000 widgets to be delivered by next week. So supplier development, pre-COVID, post-COVID, supplier development is critical. And as you can see just behind me, supplier development is critical. Yes, you can have your contracts. Yes, you can have your multi-sourcing, because when you source from many suppliers, you can trade one supplier off another. But that can only last for a certain while, because suppliers will get sick of you. They will not see you as a caring buyer. They will not see you as a caring partner. And so therefore, your contracts will become ineffective, and ultimately, sustainability requires you to rely on supplier development. That's what we've got here. So these are real examples of supplier development that is going on by the multinationals today. PUMA is another example I just want to extend on, and they talk about this whole sourcing caring tree of co-creation, co-management and co-training. And the whole idea is to try and bring the supplier into the family and make them feel part of a strategic part of PUMA's procurement process. So therefore the suppliers don't feel as though they're on an arm's length relationship, and they don't have that uncertainty that they may not get the order at the next month and the month after and the month after that. They see they're on a pathway to success for being a partner with PUMA for years to come. And you can see down below here, you can see right here, the environment, sustainability comes out from co-creation, because they want the suppliers to actually contribute to PUMA's sustainability climate change strategy. On the co-management, they see the supplier as an opportunity for them to grow into the future. And they cannot grow on just management unless we are doing training, co-training. That is, you're actually training the suppliers, upgrading their skills, so therefore they're better able to handle more sophisticated orders in the future. That's what PUMA's doing. Again, this is what we mean by supplier development. All right, IKEA, same again, communication, collaboration and compliance. Very big, and that's what we mean by supplier development. So, summarizing what these multinationals are doing, of course, their biggest concern is reputation. Compliance risk is a big area and where they have to comply in order to preserve their reputation. But compliance doesn't always preserve your reputation perfectly, because you can always have some faulty materials being delivered to your factory, like what happened with PUMA. So therefore, you need to have collaborative planning. You need to have collaboration in product development and production. Why? Because you're making promises to the supplier to have committed volume orders. You're making promises to the supplier to be involved in the design. What does that help with? Well, it helps build supplier trust, and that's what we've got here, supplier trust. And with trust, that builds reliability, and then that helps supplier responsibility and responsiveness. And so this is the big model for the more sustainable supply chain that we are observing in these multinationals. So, key takeaways. There are 4 big trade-offs with any company that is sourcing, and that really comes from the product management literature, project management literature. You know, the scope, time and cost, delivery, and of course quality in the middle. You can only have 2 of these, and you've got to trade off with the other, keeping the 4th item constant. Right, but the multinationals I've introduced to you is a multi-supplier management model. That is, yes, we can multi-source in order to give us more bandwidth, in order to give us more flexibility and more options, especially among this COVID. Multi-sourcing works very, very well, but multi-sourcing doesn't work on its own. You need to have contracts, but then contracts do not work on their own because they are incomplete, because contracts does not build trust. You need to also do this 3rd leg, and that is supplier development. And in this section of supply chain essentials, I've given you some real examples of what PUMA, H&M, IKEA, S. Oliver are doing by way of supplier development. And they're using design teams, sustainable development, sequencing of development, of bringing suppliers into higher levels of strategic collaboration with the buyer. This is O'Connor, Supply Chain Essentials. Catch you in the next video. Bye for now.